Hey everybody, we're here again on Rise of the GM. Today we're talking with guest Josh Morton about map making, reflecting, and system choice. We're going to be looking at a complicated kinship and an NPC child oracle here on Rise of the GM. Hello, how we doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Pretty good. Josh, thanks for coming back on today. Hello, everyone. We're glad that you all could make it here with us today and watch and listen along. Today, it's going to be just me and Josh talking. Matthew had some things he had to take care of today, but he actually is in the chat. I see him saying, woohoo, here we go. So you may get some info from Matthew from there as we go on. But yeah, so how you doing, Josh? Happy New Year.
Pretty good. Yeah. Happy New Year to you. I'm trying to pull YouTube up here so I can get the chat going on my side. That way I don't miss anything.
Nice. Yeah, we took a couple weeks off from this, and we're jumping back in, today into a new year, and have a couple of these kind of non-series videos, episodes that we're going to be doing today, talking to Josh about kind of reflecting over the last 10 months, I think, since we talked to you last 10 or 11 months. And then we're going to talk about getting into map making a little bit. We're going to talk about system choice a little bit, what kind of goes through our heads with that. But also looking at these, our Eureka adventure, as well as the NPC, and a few questions at the end. So why don't we go ahead and jump in, Josh, to the adventure module from Eureka, and if you'd read that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so today we've got complicated kinship.
Yeah.
A small boy approaches one of the older PCs and claims that the PC is his father. The child says, "I know you. You're my father, and you never came back. I hate you," and he runs away. The child runs to a small alleyway behind an inn and ducks inside the back door. He may grab something from the PC before running if you want to ensure that PC gives chase. The boy is the bastard child of a local royal and a barmaid. He seeks to involve the PCs in an attempt to draw out his real father. The mother keeps the identity of the boy's father a secret. If the connection is discovered, rivals might kill the child or use him for political gain. Inside the inn, the mother shields the child as he shouts about his real father. After quieting the boy and sending him to his room, she apologizes and offers the PCs a free night's stay. She explains that the boy feels abandoned by his father and expresses remorse at not being able to tell him the truth. She asks only that the PCs keep her secret. An agent of a rival noble house overhears the child and the story, and later that night he kidnaps the child from his room. The agent returns, demanding help from the PCs and blackmailing the royal with the information about the child. The child will be killed if the PCs don't help. The PCs are to deliver a message to the royal and demand a ransom. Then it goes on to say, provide some way for the PCs to get audience with the royal. When told about the situation, he asks the PCs to rescue the child on his behalf, as the royal cares for the child, but cannot act publicly. He'll provide details on the nobleman's house, including a secret passage through the wine cellar. He also warns that the kidnapper is devious and employs many layers of protection in his schemes. The royal will punish the nobleman in private and reward the PCs once the child is safe. Sneaking into the nobleman's house, the PCs find it well fortified and on high alert. Guards patrol the area, traps are set, and the child is securely hidden. This plot can be played as a covert, stealth-driven scenario, but if the PCs are discovered, it will quickly become a vicious fight to escape.
Yeah, nice. I like what I like about this specifically is the multiple layers of style in that.
Right.
I find that to be more interesting to me when I look at these adventures, and you're trying to make our own. If we're trying to homebrew some things like that too, you have a lot of role play that can happen at the beginning. There's like persuasive stuff and like, all these different things, meeting people, having conversations. But then you get some like more skill oriented things of trying to sneak in.
Right.
I have very strong doubts that this never turns into a fight at the end, kind of thing. And I think that even is a little more interesting. So, what's your kind of initial thing after reading that?
I do like the layers. I'm trying to think what it reminds me of something that I've read or heard before, but I don't know. I like you also think that every party has that person that's in armor and doesn't care about stealth. So you're going to 9 times out of 10 probably end up in some kind of fight, brawl out
Right.
situation.
Mhm.
Unless you send in your quiet people, but then what are your other people doing during that time? So
Right. Yeah.
I think it's hilarious that this kid is coming out and just randomly like hitting up random people just saying, "You're my dad, I hate you."
Yeah. It's one way to approach it, I guess.
And I think yeah, Rob put in the comments something similar to what I'm thinking. You will probably have someone somewhere say, "You're not my kid, this isn't my problem.
Right.
Sorry."
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a GM, you probably need to be prepared for that. If you have me in your party, Adam's identifier as a player character is he always has some kind of animal companion.
Hmm.
I swear all of my characters, if it has anything to do with a kid, I 10 out of 10 am helping or trying to entertain them in some way. So that seems to be a theme of mine. So
Yes. So
I
that'd
would be
work for you.
that would be
Yeah.
me. I would not be the person to be like, not my kid, not my problem. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's some like seeding of this, and part of me, I don't know. I feel like I say this a lot with these, but I almost want like a longer term situation to happen where, um, like really long term. I mean, I don't know if everybody has a lot of people don't have the ability to play this long term, like in game, but it's like you knew somebody already, you knew the mother already. It was like a childhood friend or somebody from your village or something that you were on friendly terms with. And then there's a situation of like, oh, they have a kid. And then this kind of, you have a little more buy-in to like, my friend's kid is in trouble,
right, yeah,
kind of thing. Or, if it doesn't, maybe you don't have that, but you meet these people, you have that initial situation, time goes on, there's interactions within the village or whatever, and you have built rapport. It's like one of those NPCs that has joined the story a little more. And then this happens. Like I feel more, I'm kind of like you though. It's like if somebody put this in front of me, I'd be like, yes, of course we're going to do this, because I'm a bleeding heart, but like,
well, and the other thing I think is too, it's like how do you, depending on what your campaign is, what your story is, what you're going for, right? Like, how do you incorporate this into what's already happening? Kind of like what you're saying.
Yeah.
I can say this because Matthew isn't here, but maybe he'll comment. Matthew would be the person to say, okay, yes, we'll do this, but what is the king going to give us in return?
Right.
Like, whether that's information or gold or whatever that looks like. But just trying to incorporate that in what you already have would be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, Rob, we do have voice of reasons. That say in the chat, he hopes we have a voice of reason in our groups. And the the good news is, it sounds like anytime we have anything approach us, we're ready to jump in and venture after it. But I do like that idea of building rapport. Even like the kid, it's like maybe this all starts with like groups going down for a dungeon crawl. It's just literally like, hey, there's monsters and treasure, and we're going down in there. But then like you get in there and this kid is like falling down into the
Help! I
cave, and
followed down the well.
it's like Timmy's down there, and you gotta help him get out of the cave, and then there's like a friendship that can bud, and then you realize, oh, this is this kid who kind of throws off the like "you're my dad" like yelling thing, but to play with that and kind of adjust it. But I do like when thinking about, again, like making some kind of campaign adventure, or like just a session adventure, that like those kind of layers happen. And
I think you
that's
would
pretty
definitely
cool.
have to like flesh out the like this other party that's kidnapped the kid. Like you would have to flesh out and really like think beyond just like surface level thinking of what do they want from this? What are they gonna do if nothing happens? Because actions have consequences and D&D, and so like no action is an action, and what happens if nothing happens?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I like this for opening. If you're maybe making a game that, or if you're in the midst of a arc or campaign or whatever that maybe has a little more political intrigue, if you're kind of going in that direction, this is a good setup for that, because I mean you're starting to see like, okay, royal, you have this illegitimate child, you have nobles that are like trying to put pressure on the royal through this. Like you're starting to open up avenues to get into that. And I think that can be kind of a cool thing to, if you're wanting to go deeper into that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's a cool way to do that.
I think the most political intrigue that I've gotten out of D&D is when we did your one shot. It was, but all of your one shots are supposed to be one shots, and then
happens.
They turn into something else. So I think it's how we started Silver Shields, right? With like weren't we a political figure was like kidnapped or like missing or
she was a socialite, but like the prefect specifically was worried about the fact she had been captured.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Matthew says he would make the kid semi-join the party, and no matter what town you go to, he just randomly across people yelling, "You're my dad! I hate you!"
When I first read this, I chuckled a lot too, because currently in our campaign that we play on Thursday nights, we went to a beautiful, wonderful the Quay, and the captain of the Quay, when we came back, turns out that she's with child, and there's multiple situations where multiple different people in our party are like, "Was that you?"
It's kind of the Spider-Man pointing fingers at each other as what's happening right now. So yeah.
So I read that the other day and I chuckled a lot.
That's for the next campaign then. Kids are welcome. So well, cool. Any other thoughts on that before we kind of move on to our main stuff here?
I don't think so. I do think, and I don't know if you guys usually read this, but when I was reading it, at the bottom it says easily adapted, and it gives you all these different scenarios where it says like cyberpunk, fantasy, sci-fi, space, swashbuckling, traditional fantasy, whatnot. Like, I think this is a good scenario that you could basically run in any like setting. Like it doesn't have to be fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because the royal family is royal doesn't mean that can't be some part of a government in cyberpunk or something else.
Yeah, for sure. That is a really good point. We don't really talk about that when we do these, but this being that Eureka book and has all these adventure starters, they do a really good job of fitting those in there. So again, if you're ever looking for this book, anybody out there listening, it's very helpful. So well, cool. Well, bringing you on here today, like one of the reasons, had a really good time conversing about the new GM experience, about a year ago, 9, 10, 11 months ago. But it was great having you on. Love having conversations with you, Josh, and wanted to kind of do, I guess, a multiple kind of thing here today, which was reflecting a little bit more. You've had more months under your belt. You've been running stuff, playing things. Just to kind of hear a little bit about that experience, over the last months. But then also, you've recently been doing a little bit of map making. Kind of wanted to pick your brain about that and kind of
Yeah.
see like where that's went. And then another thing just has kind of been on my mind is like we've all played different systems, and to kind of have a little bit of a conversation there about just the choice, of
Right.
like why play what, kind of thing. So, so kind of jumping back in, again, like it's been about 10 or 11 months since you were on here last. And I did want to just kind of ask, like, if there have been specific things that have kind of, you feel like you've learned, maybe you've grown in, or feel like you've been like working through during that time.
So I know, probably right after I was on with you guys last, I had inserted a question into our handy haversack, and it was, I don't remember how exactly I worded it, but for the most part, it had to do with how do you push the story along, and you have like this great idea for one character, but you don't want to focus all on one character, right? So you want to make sure it's cohesive. And I talked to my players about that, and all of them pretty much agreed that I was pretty focused on one aspect of the story. So for the last little bit of time, I've been working pretty diligently on building up those different character arcs, I guess you would say, where you are kind of melding that pot together so that it doesn't feel like, oh, this is all about this one character and we're just supporting characters. So that's something that I've worked through, and honestly, I think the best way of doing that was just asking my players, like, how do we feel about this, like, and the feedback was pretty straightforward, pretty good feedback. Nobody raked me over the coals too hard.
Nice.
But it's good to have people that you play with that will give you honest answers too.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that was nice.
Yeah.
What else?
Jumping into that real quick. Was that a thing where you just asked for feedback, or was that something you had kind of been realizing? And
so I had asked the question because I kind of felt that way at one point. And I think it was because Taylor's in the chat, so she'll get a kick out of this. I think Taylor and I were talking, and at one point she's like, well, yeah, Stromlack's the main character and we're the supporting characters. And I'm like, it was like a dagger to my heart. I'm like, no, that's not what I want you to feel like. And so trying to flip that and get it even across the board is something that I've tried very hard to work towards.
Yeah. That kind of can be difficult. I think for a lot of reasons to like move to accidentally do that, kind of thing, because sometimes it's like, we've talked a lot on here, character backstories and asking people for things. And, sometimes that's just not what people want to give, but it does make it difficult if you don't have any, like person X doesn't give you anything.
Right.
Person Y gives you 100 things. It's a lot easier to tie those in.
So I saw a video, I think it was just yesterday, maybe the day before, on TikTok, and it was our beautiful, wonderful king, Matt Mercer. But he was talking about how he tries to incentivize his PCs to like build something that he can work with by like saying, hey, I need you to give me a backstory, and if you like put parameters on it, and if you do A, B, and C, then you get a legendary, not a legendary, but like a rare item when you start out, to be like, oh, if I do this, I'm gonna get something cool. I want that something cool. And then it's like you're dangling the carrot type of situation, because that does make it hard when you have people that story building is why they're there. Like that's
Yeah,
the
right.
reason. And so like they will give you 3 pages worth of a backstory
Yeah.
and dialogue and main characters and whatever.
Mhm.
And then you just have somebody that rolls up a character and says, "Here you go." Which, to each their own. That is fine.
Yeah, and
It
that's
just
yeah.
it's harder.
Rob said, I
I will
always say
give
if
you
you
background.
if you don't provide background info, I will give you background. They will
Yeah,
not be the same benefit for your character. Yeah, I try to balance like, and I think like these conversations we've had, over the last like year and a half, of like just that whole recognition of like, just because I'm built a certain way doesn't mean that my players are, and all players are going to look different. And trying to not like force a mold onto people, but also those things of like, I wonder. I'm going like way off today. This is
you're
what
good.
Matthew does. He like brings me back in. I think
I'll bring you
among
back.
many other things, but the so like I'm thinking about a Critical Role cast kind of thing. I think they're, from at least my outside viewing, they're very all built for that like story and world building and stuff. So I wonder if you have somebody who's just like, I really don't care about background, and then you give that incentive, like what that would look like, kind of thing too. But I think that is a cool idea of like, hey, here's like different kind of tiers of what I'm looking for. And if you do that, then your character does kind of start with some good things.
Yeah.
That is a cool idea.
And I
So
think that the hardest part of me specifically in my campaign, and Taylor can vouch for this,
mm,
I have had so many people in and out of my campaign
oh
that
yeah,
it's like trying to build a cohesive story and actually make what people are doing matter
yeah,
when it's like, oh, well, they're not going to be here next week, or they might not be here for 2 weeks, or they're just done playing
yeah,
altogether. It ups the difficulty, that's for
for
sure.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, I kind of cut you off there, but you were about to say some more things about reflecting.
Um, I, because I was taught by none other than Adam and Matthew. Um, Adam and Matthew were the first people that I played D&D with, or at that time it was Pathfinder, and that's what I run on Saturdays.
Mm.
Um, but we play, I think Matthew calls it high fantasy. Is that what he calls? Very powerful.
High power. Yeah.
High power. And so with that, because I am very story driven, I like making my own items, which
Mm.
can get you into trouble very quickly. So that being said, just balancing some of those things and
Yeah.
being upfront with your players. Specifically, I know one of my players is a dragon rider, and I made her basically. I tweaked the dragon rider class in Pathfinder,
Mm.
and I said at level this, and I don't remember what level it is. You basically get this the magic that flows from your dragon into you. It like ups at that level, and you
Okay.
get this custom like power that is
Mm.
unique to you. And I made this. I asked her a few questions about her personality because I wanted like the character's personality and what's most
Yeah.
important to her, because I
Right.
wanted that I call it a signet. I wanted that power to reflect like her person.
Yeah. For sure.
And so I was very upfront with her after I asked her the questions. She didn't know why I was asking the questions at first. Now she does. But I was very upfront after I gave her like her signet and that power. I'm like, listen, I think this is pretty balanced and I think it'll be fine, but I need you to be okay. If it's completely broken,
Yeah.
we're going to have to tweak it a little
Right.
bit. So, I think there's a lot of fun. A lot of fun for me as a DM is getting those like custom
Hmm.
custom items, making stuff up for characters that like really sets with their character. It's just fun
Yeah.
coming with that coming up with that kind of stuff, because even though there's about 1,000,001 different items in the player's handbook for Pathfinder, it's like, I want something different.
Yeah, sometimes it's cool to make unique things, and sometimes it's just not exactly what you want either, kind of thing. So Matthew said, still, it's so great to have unique items. Love it. Just keep upping everyone's power and the enemies until it's all insane land.
Yeah,
so it makes it awesome. It is an interesting like balancing act. I understand that. And, you just suddenly there's a person killing dragons, I guess. So
that's true.
Or everything's in tiny little holes that you have to go down into from there on out. So but yeah, I like the idea. There is that balance of like, okay, if somebody has something that maybe has brought them up, like how can we work? And that's a thing I honestly have struggled with at times, and to this day still like working through that. So I think it's good to pay attention to it, but those unique items are super cool.
And I think something segue off of that is the fact that like high power, high fantasy, you're making these custom items that are amping everybody's power up just a little bit more anyway. Yeah. And I think I learned this from you. Matthew probably does it too, and I just never knew it back when we were playing Pathfinder in his campaign, is a lot of times I just reskin things. I think that's what you call it, right?
Yeah. Right.
So it's like you want a monster that looks like this, but they have a CR rating of 1, and you're like, your characters are 12. Like they're gonna look at that. All they have to do is look at it, and it's dead.
Yeah.
So like reskinning things to make it cohesive for your story,
right?
And to make it just all go together, has been a big thing that I've been doing for a while now.
For sure.
So
yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that's a big help. I think like being able to do that. I do that a lot, particularly with I don't so much like take stats from a creature in the monster manual or whatever, and then take another creature in the monster manual and just like flip them. It's like, well, the goblin suddenly has Tarrasque stats, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's which I think you can do that to an extent, and there could be even like story reasons, like to make that happen. There's probably ones that would be closer together that would work in that way. It's like, well, it's a goblin, but it has an ogre stat, like that. We could figure that out. You'd have boss goblin, kind of thing.
One of my oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, but like I like even the idea of, okay, this monster, that's maybe from a different game, or like I was reading some, Scottish folk and fairy tales, and I'm like, oh yeah, that would be pretty sweet, but I don't see anything in the monster manual like that. What if I explained it like that, but it had this stat block like that? I tend to be more in that realm kind of thing, and I think it does make some like interesting things for people.
Yeah. One of my favorite, which this kind of goes off of it, and it was kind of like a reskin, and since we're past that, Taylor, you can know all of this. But one of my favorite things in our campaign that happened was there were 2 PCs. They were going back to this like outcropping area. It was like a god's den, like a place where I'm not explaining it well. It doesn't matter. Anyway, this goblin who is a PC and this lieutenant of the goblin's dad's army, they basically, Keegan had decided that he was going to 1v1 this guy, right?
Okay.
And he's a swashbuckler, so swords, panache, that whole bit.
Yeah.
And the lieutenant, same thing, not a swashbuckler, but think like dual swords type of deal. So they're going at it. They're pretty even. And then all of a sudden that lieutenant, he just like takes both of his swords and flings them in the mud, and he just squares up, and he just starts like flurry of blows. So
wow.
He's like, I'm done with these swords. And then it was like, it's kind of like, what do we say? Final forming it.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, you've hit me enough. I'm done with you. Ka-chow.
Yeah.
It was just fun. It was good.
That is awesome. That feels very Princess Bride, like, you know, I know
I've never
something you
watched
don't
that
know.
movie.
Oh no, I I I think you should sometime. But there's this iconic moment where they're having a duel, and the guy's like, "Why are you smiling?" It's like, "I know something you don't know.
Right.
I'm not left-handed." You know, and so
I'm not left-handed.
he switches hands, and kind of thing.
Boom.
That's like
Yeah,
iconic and memeable, and I'm sure you've seen something like that. So
something.
you've brought this up a couple times, like you brought up Pathfinder D&D, you know, and that was one of the convos I wanted to have a little bit today is having played and run, you know, different systems kind of thing. And like that's a thing, you know, Matthew's done the same. We've been in D&D, Pathfinder, now playing 5e in our Thursday
Yeah.
nights. We've played a lot of different games on Thursday nights, and part of that probably is like whatever the weird desire I have to constantly be doing different ones and learning new systems is just like a thing I like. So I've got to do that a lot too. And part of the combo today, you know, with you, so you made we played Pathfinder, and we'll one day again play Pathfinder on Thursday nights. We've played some other things, but we've currently playing 5e
Right.
with my game. I know I've played a game of you running 5e, but you went with Pathfinder for your like
Weekend.
regular game kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? So with you, I have thoughts in my brain about why, but like when you're thinking through that, when you kind of made that decision, what were the thought processes kind of going on with that?
So, yet again, Taylor will just last Saturday. Taylor said, "If I had $1 for every time Josh says I should just switch to 5e, I should just switch to 5e." So there's a jar out there somewhere that Taylor's just putting $1 into every single time. Um, I originally, when I first started DMing, I chose Pathfinder because that is what I was familiar with.
Okay, yeah.
Matthew had run our Dormant Mind campaign for years. I mean, it was probably what, 3 or 4 years. And then I started DMing, or I wanted to start, and I was just more comfortable in that that setting. I knew how he ran it. I was familiar with the rules. And so just that familiarity, I chose Pathfinder.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I don't know why I always think, oh, I should switch to 5e, but I do. And I honestly think it's bonus actions. Like if I could implement bonus actions in the Pathfinder, I think I would love it. But I'm like, when someone will like do something on a Saturday night and I'm like, okay, what's your bonus action? And they're like, what? And I'm like, just kidding. This is Pathfinder. I'm so sorry. So I don't know why. I think I want to switch to 5e. Just I think it's faster. Combat's faster, maybe quicker. I think there's something to be said about. I think you can. What's the word I'm looking for? Customize, I guess, a character a little bit more as a Pathfinder PC, just because you get skill points every single level that you're putting in whatever skill you want to be.
Right. Yeah.
And so I mean, like, you can be a rogue and still stacked in whatever skill you want to be in. So I think there's something to be said about being able to customize a character in Pathfinder that it doesn't feel as customizable in 5e.
Right.
I know I've talked to other people, probably you included, that I've heard people say, oh, well, 5e is easier if you have like new people coming in. It's more streamlined. It's easier to teach other people 5e. I mean, I taught Taylor how to play 5e. I taught my sister-in-law, not 5e, Pathfinder. See, I'm switching them already. I've taught a lot of people how to play Pathfinder. So
Mm,
I don't know. Uh, what are your thoughts? I guess.
yeah, yeah. I hear. I may broaden out a little bit, even outside of those. But if we're gonna stick with like a D20 fantasy, talking Pathfinder, so
Right.
just like a reiteration at the beginning. I came in on 3.5 D&D 3.5. Played 3.5, played 4 and 5 now. And then Pathfinder has probably been, as a player, Pathfinder is definitely longest I've played. I'm pretty sure in that realm of things,
Mm-hmm.
D20 fantasy, and I would say overall, like, I like. It's been a while since I've run E3.5 Pathfinder type game. I think I like the running of it as a GM in 5e more because of those things you said, where it's like, uh, it just moves a little faster. The difference, like, I bring this up a lot, but like Cormac, may he rest in peace. When I would like go into a battle, this is my barbarian for everybody. It's like, uh, I'd be like, okay, well, I charge. Okay, this is again Pathfinder. I charge, so it's a +2. I'm flanking with so and so, so it's another +2. I'm, using power attack, so I'm actually negative to hit, but extra to damage. And I'm, this far away from somebody else, so I'm adding a +1 to that. I'm using a two-handed weapon, so it's like I'm
Right.
like doing math over here on a calculator every hit, kind of to do that. And P.S. I love that. Like, I actually love it. But as a runner of a game, um, you know,
That
again, I
takes
love that. I
time.
love that as a player. That takes time, but then where 5e oversimplifies it in some ways and just says, you have advantage, and it's
Yeah.
like, okay.
Oh, that's
Um,
the other thing. Ugh.
so I do, I think I go back and forth whether I'm playing or running, and those kind of things where if I'm going to say like, hey, random group of people, let's play a one shot. Likely, what I'm going to do is say, hey, we're going to play 5e,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. I'm not even touching 2024 right now, but like, just like, playing, it's like, hey, it's easy to make stuff real quick. It's easy to teach, those kind of things. If I'm saying in a D20, but again, as a player, all those customizable things you were saying, Matthew brought up like flexibility in his comment. We'll read that fully here in a second, but the flexibility of, I can do these things with all these skills. I love skills. I don't know if that's
Skill
just
monkey
because
for
of where I
days.
came in D&D or what, but I love skills so much. I want all the skills. I want them all maxed out. I want like to be able to do all these things, and that I don't like as much in like a 5e game.
Yeah.
But kind of broadening. Actually, I'm going to talk about the chat here for a second before I go deeper into that. Rob had said, since you like high power games, adding bonus actions for the PCs wouldn't break the game any more than most of the extra things, which is true. I was even thinking, Josh, like, so you do have swift actions in
True.
Pathfinder, and that wouldn't be a like homebrewing. What does a swift action do, or maybe some extra things could be viable, for
Yeah.
that too. Of like, I think there's even, it's like free swift standard move. I feel like there's another one in there too, but I can't remember what it is. But like, I think you could play with swift actions into a
Yeah.
bonus action kind of situation, and do that. Matthew says, I like whatever capitalized free and whatever gives the most capitalized most flexibility, because for me, I want the quotes or the capitalized story to trump everything else, and removing costs and rules with too much rigidity works for me. Thus, usually like Pathfinder, I love having a billion dice to roll. Yeah, that's and I agree. I think, and we're talking Pathfinder 1, but it's pretty sweet to like pull up on the internet everything.
Well, that's the thing too. Every single time I go to switch, because there have been multiple times I'm like, ooh, I got some downtime. I'm on vacation. I'm gonna take this time. I'm gonna take all of my homebrewed Pathfinder stuff, and I'm gonna switch us over to 5e. And I've told
Yeah.
my players that multiple times, and they're
Yeah.
just sick of hearing it at this point.
Yeah.
But every time I go to do that, it's like I know Matthew has referenced this before, but I use Combat Manager on my
Yeah.
computer
Yeah.
for all of my monsters, right? And so 5e doesn't have like I don't have Combat Manager for 5e.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And so when I figured that out, I hit the emergency brake because I'm like, how am I supposed to DM without Combat Manager?
That's
um,
funny.
so
Yeah, the tools that we have available, that does. And again, like this conversation, just by the way, for everybody, is not a like, this is why you should play Pathfinder, but it's like working through these things is the point of like this convo of like, why do we choose what we choose? And that's a very viable, that's a good reason for choosing something, is like, hey, I have this tool that I really like and it helps me be more efficient as a game master. So like, why would I not, kind of do that thing?
yeah,
Evan mentioned something in regards to the bonus actions, reskinning D&D 4e minor action powers or Pathfinder 2 single action class feats as an extra quote bonus action could be cool rewards for Pathfinder 1 characters. It's that like homebrewing powers. Those are worth looking into also.
nice.
Yeah, those kind of things. So it's good call there too. Kind of broadening out a little bit for me, and I don't know, like that's your experience, right, Josh? Like
For
5e and
running
Pathfinder
games,
running games. Yeah.
yeah, it's just 5e and
Um,
Pathfinder.
yeah. I think there's like if somebody's out there listening to this and or watching and you're like, I don't really know what to do with my group, I think starting to like one, what you're familiar with, I think is always a good way to go. It's like you understand the game, you know it, you've played it. That's good. I think that's a really great place to start or to jump into and to be comfortable. Like, again, we kind of brought up like the tools. What tools do we have at our disposal? Is it within my budget? To do these things. Like, what
Right.
what kind of stuff are we looking for? Um, but then like there's the maybe going a little bit farther of like those kind of questions we ask about like our tables, or like what are people looking for when they come to the table. And some people, you may have a table that like everybody is just like, I want to roll 50 dice every single time, and I want to do math, and like I want crunchy kind of mechanics and things like that. And like that's a thing to think about. Or like, are people wanting to be super imaginative and like not roll a ton of dice but be able to just like kind of do a thing really quickly and not add a lot into that. So I think that's like a good place to be, is to question that. We have, over our Thursday night times, have had the like, I'd say, blessing of like people being up for, yeah, let's just try it, kind of thing, and
Yeah.
to play it. And sometimes it's like, that's not really our favorite, and we'll move on to something else. Or it's like, man, I really like this
In
game
our
and we want to play
defense, I
more.
don't think we've played a system that I haven't enjoyed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. That's not true for me in my life, but I I don't think I've ever hated anything. It's not
That's fair.
like, oh, I would choose this again, but like, um, but I do things like, I've run a lot of Red Markets games, which we've talked about.
Yeah.
A decent amount of Symbols, the Multiverse, or the Symbols Comics RPG. Um, did some Starfinder,
Mm.
and trying to remember other games that I've run.
Red Markets, Starfinder. Trying to think what you've run for us.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fantasy stuff, but
Yeah.
like when I'm thinking about those, part of that is like, part of it is that story driven part for me, where I'm like, okay, what's the story that I am excited to like put building blocks in front of people
Right.
with, kind of thing of, or what's the if it's a little more sandboxy, then it's like, well, what's the world I want to put people in and let them play, kind of
Right.
thing. So that's a good thing to think through. If you're out there like, hey, kind of wanting to sit down with a table and play for a session or a campaign or whatever, is like asking some of those questions, having those kind of conversations.
And I think Taylor did a really good job with this in her campaign that she started. We put it on pause for a bit now, but when she was building her world, her campaign, right? She had us do our backstories, but then within our backstories, we said, hey, we want to be from here. We want to be from here. But then she let us, if we wanted to, create that entire like city.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's just part of the group story building, I guess. And I don't think everybody took advantage of it, but myself and I, of course, took advantage of it. And I mean, I've even done that for what do we play on Thursday nights right now? Jade Mass. There we go.
Jade Mass, yeah.
Yeah. I just think it's fun because not as a DM, like you are vested in your players, but your player is going to be more vested in their specific character than you ever will be. And so letting them flesh out some of those things if they want to, one, takes it off your plate, and two, just invests them even deeper into what's happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I
saw that.
The biggest tangent ever, but
no, that's great. No, it's great. And for that kind of thing, again, this is going on a tangent, but I think Matthew brought it up at once, but in the Jade Mask game, there's different groups of magic users in the capital. And like, I gave you guys all basically an assignment. It was like, hey, I'd like you to, write up a basic idea of like how this group functions, some of the people in it and stuff. And again, that was kind of like the backstory thing where some people were like, here are 5 pages of notes. And, some people were like, here's a bullet list of a couple things, which still was great. But the thing I found was interesting, you're talking about the buy-in, was I didn't expect it, was everybody was like, well, I want to engage with those people now that I've written it. Oh no, it's like we only have so much time, but
that was at the wedding, right?
Yeah.
When all of them were there, and we're like trying to covertly get information about what's going on, and everybody goes their separate ways. Yeah.
So I it was unexpected, but it was a cool thing to see that. You kind of talked about, I think that's a good transition, even talking about these creation of things, but did you guys make maps at all when you did that kind of group think, or what did that look like?
We did not. Taylor had already made her map when that happened. Okay. Right. And so she's like, I think we had kind of like a soft session 0 type of situation. Maybe she sent it over Discord. I don't remember, honestly. But she had showed us the map. She's like, here's, like, she laid out where she needed specific things to be, right? Like, she knew the story in her head where specific things need to be. But like, I saw the snowy region up in the north, and I'm like, hey, I'm from that place, and here is 5 pages of what's going to happen in that place. And so we didn't group build a map, but it was just like choosing what she had already created. But
for sure.
Go ahead. Sorry.
You go for it.
Oh, I was just going to say the segue in the map making, if we want to go there.
Yeah, for sure.
I started building maps on my handy dandy iPad, Procreate. It's a one-time $15 charge. I'm no way sponsoring Procreate. But
if Procreate wanted to sponsor us, though, that would be
there. You go. Yeah, they could. So anyway, that's what I use. I originally started using maps or making my own maps, and I softly say making my own maps because the reason I even dove down that rabbit hole is because Matthew had a world that we did our Pathfinder campaign in. And I think I said this when I was on here the first time. The biggest hang up for me as a DM was creating a world. Like it was a huge hurdle that I wasn't prepared to jump over.
Right. Yeah.
It was scary. It's like, what if I don't know everything? What if I don't have everything fleshed out? So the only logical solution to that was ripping off Matthew's world. And so I took Matthew's world and I made it my own. The problem with that is I took his picture and it has all of these random names on it, which is fine. Some of them have stayed the same, some of them do not. The funny part is when your characters in your campaign are like, why does that say whatever the name is on Matthew's map? And at the beginning of my campaign, my reasoning of it was, oh well, that's a really old Elven map. The names have changed since it went into common, and so I just recently decided, hey, not all of the places that we've been are like these great big huge places that on Matthew's map were labeled or marked out. Idrisel is one of them. Good job, Matthew. And so I'm like, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to my players by not having an accurate map.
Right, yeah.
And so I thought, hey, I'm going to redo this map so that when we visit a new place, I can update the map. I can put in the correct common name and everything else. So that's kind of where I started doing maps, and it's been fun. I actually I don't know if you're familiar. I think we've talked about it before, but the dice method of making a map.
Right, yeah.
Where you take your dice, for everybody listening, and you roll it on a big piece of paper. Some people use rice, and so each type of dice, D10s, D12s, D4s, so on and so forth, signify a specific thing, whether it's,
that's right.
a lake or a town or a city or a mountain or whatever it may be. And so I teach fourth grade, and so my kids were they don't like writing, right? What 9-year-old likes to write about school uniforms or whatever else. And so I pulled in some world making into social studies and doing compasses and cardinal directions and whatnot. And so we made our own map in fourth grade. Cool. And right now we are doing like creative writing on them making the cities and the towns and what's going on in this world.
That's cool.
So that was pretty fun. And that's honestly the first map that I have made from scratch. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. Just to give you a little bit of encouragement, I have a hand-drawn map that we've used for the Jade Masks that you guys ask, what's this? What are these names? Like all the time, I'm like, I wrote that by hand and it's still wrong. So a cool piece of, I think, building your world in this way, and like maps are part of that, and again, there's kind of I feel like there's like a continuum of what all do you want. I like to have some tangible things for like the game like that. But again, like there's things where, Matthew's talked a lot about like rendering out at different times and how it's like you could do a thing where, if we're going like to the game I'm in, you guys all started in Tifa's Edge, this like bustling city. And it's like, well, we kind of have an idea of where the city is, but you don't really need to know what's on the other side of the continent because, and that can kind of grow as you go.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to do that, but sometimes I like to just like, here's a world map. I think for you guys, I had the world map because it was a world that I had used before, which I'm highly encouraging and suggesting for all you GMs out there. If you begin to play more and more campaigns, to consider using your world over, because one, you put all the work in to build it, and that's like worthwhile to make use of again. But you can even begin to bring the lore from past games into that for like, it's like, well, what happened here? And it's like, well, actually, I was there when all this happened because my players from the last campaign were, it's like you can bring that stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tangenting, but there's that like, I could have done the thing where it was like bringing it bigger and bigger as you go. And I think that kind of happened where I had a local map that you guys got a hold of at one point.
Yeah. Yep.
But then eventually it was like, no, here's the continent map. And even though, the whole eastern side of the continent, you guys don't really, it's sort of not appearing in this film, kind of thing of like, that's probably not going to, it's been referenced, but it's probably not going to play a role unless you guys change your minds about different things. But that was a way to like broaden it and make it bigger and a greater understanding of that. So I think there's different ways to do that, but I do like the tangible, like here are ways to like place ourselves in the world and have an understanding of what it even means.
Right. And I mean, I even did that for the Jade Mass map, just a little bit of it. And it was funny because, and I'm sure you remember this, when we try to meet in person every like 3 weeks, right? Yeah. And so we were in person the last time, and I had just gotten onto this whole map making kick. Mm-hmm. And so I had taken what Adam had hand drawn on, what is that? Like, what kind of paper is that?
Weird. I don't know.
Weird paper. And I had mapped it all out where we were at, and we all started in Tifa's Edge. We've been in Tifa's Edge, I don't know, a bunch. And I hand my iPad over to Matthew as we're talking about these encroaching armies like coming to take over Tifa's Edge. Mm-hmm. And he's like, that's where Tifa's Edge is? It's on the water? What? And so that was like, it was so funny. It was just like, just being able to give your, like you said, give your players that tangible, like real thing to like envision where they are. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. That paper is like, I got it at an art store. I know where I got it. It was an art store in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, when I was in college, and it's like handmade-ish kind of feeling, but it's actually not great. Think about what the materials you use if you are going to do like a physical map, because pencil on very textured paper is not really that great to begin with. I need to ink it, but
that's funny.
Yeah, so that can be a big help to things for sure.
Yeah. And I think kind of going back to map making, I haven't done this personally yet, but so my game that I run is completely and totally online. We've never met in person to do a in-person session. My people live all across the US, right?
Right.
And so that being said, I rely on Pinterest a lot for my maps that I'm pulling into Roll20.
I see.
And you have a picture in your mind on how something should look, and so you can take and edit things in Procreate. So like I can layer it to where that picture off Pinterest is in the back, and then I can layer something on top of it to change it completely to like what's in my head.
Right.
I have not gotten there yet, but I plan on eventually having battle maps that I can just crank out. Because Exhibit A, if Taylor's still listening, my party just got done taking out the Sanderson sisters on top of a mountaintop, and and it was the same mountaintop that they had, same battle map mountaintop that they had previously been across, the world on, I don't know, 2 years ago or however long ago it was.
Right.
And they're like, did we feed a dragon on this mountaintop? And I'm like, is that the same map? Dang it.
You've seen one mountain, you've seen all of them. So.
Yeah. It's just that it's like what's in your mind's eye might come to fruition if you can like make it yourself type of idea.
Right.
But yet again, that takes time, and sometimes time is precious, and you just don't have enough of it. So
yeah, for sure. Well, cool, man. Well, thanks for talking through that a little bit, doing some reflecting, and I think we could move to our MPC for today. Talk a little bit about our
Child Oracle.
Child Oracle, which sounds kind of interesting here.
I really do like this one.
I did my typical thing where I jumped over here, tried to segue, and then did not
pull it up.
Pull it up. So again, this is from the Masks book from Gnome Stew that we use every week. And what we're going to talk about here is Hatar the Augur. Hatar the Augur. How about
Hatar,
the Child Oracle? I'm going to go Hatar. The child says, It's good to see you again, my friend. Say nothing else. I already know why you're here. I saw it all in a vision. Hatar is 9 years old, just over 4 feet tall and plump. His hair is shaved except for 3 long braids, which originate behind his left ear. His head is tattooed with ornate lions. He has a deep stare that isn't threatening or intimidating. He holds his hands palm to palm in front of him while listening. He nods slowly when people talk, and when he speaks, it's in a slow, soft voice. Despite his age, he has wisdom beyond his years. He's rarely surprised and gives off an aura of calm. He hasn't lost his childish charm, which puts people at ease. He was raised to serve his church as an oracle, and he understands the role that he plays and approaches it with great respect. Hatar's birth fulfilled a prophecy for his church. It foretold the coming of a great oracle who would lead his people to an age of prosperity. The church raised him from birth. At the age of 5, Hatar had his first vision, and since then his visions have increased in frequency. He's become able to control his abilities only recently. Visions of his early demise plague his mind, but he's not shared that news with anyone. So this is Hatar, the Child Oracle. What do you think?
Well, first and foremost, appearance. When I first read it, all I could think of was Aang.
I thought
the Last Airbender.
That's exactly, yeah.
The first time I read it too, I didn't realize it said plump. Well, Aang is not very plump.
Right, yeah.
But it's also funny because I thought it would be hilarious if this 9-year-old just had the deepest voice, man. And he's like this oracle talking to you, but he's 9 years old. I don't know. I overdo prophecies in my campaign too much, so I love oracles. And
Overdue? What?
Overdue.
No.
There's no such thing. Good to know. I love it. I don't know. This, depending on where you are in your campaign, this could very much like serve as a way to like push something forward, push an agenda, like not railroad, because you don't want to do that, but right. Like this kiddo has the gift of vision, and so you come across him in the street, and whether it is, you know, the world's ending in 30 days and here's how you need to help, like he sees you as the great savior, or
yeah, right.
So on and so forth. I think you could do a lot with any oracle, but it also talks about how he's got that childish charm. So maybe like you actually stop and listen. Like, you know, there's all these people probably trying to make a buck in the world, and they're like, "Oh, I see visions," and whatever. I don't know. I would stop yet again because he's a child. It's in my nature.
Yep. Yeah. Matthew said, "What if this child oracle thought everyone was their father and hated them?"
In a quiet, calm way, of course.
I'm going to bounce off of that. What if the only thing this child oracle was like blocked in his vision was who his father was?
Oh.
It's like the one block on his like oracle mind kind of
one
thing.
Thing he can't see.
Yeah. I think I think as a player, I would be super suspicious and not like this person. I got to be honest, like that kind of thing tends to make I guess it's me. I'm the one prickling because all my characters do that. But like, be like, what's this kid's game? What's the angle? Like kind of thing. Is this for real? So that might be a hard sell for me as a player. I think
Well,
if
and
you
I
were going to,
say, sorry, I say that I would be for it, but you put a little girl in front of us right across the bridge, and I said, "Listen, guys, we don't have time for this. We're leaving." So I think depending on what character you're playing, it could go a lot of different ways. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think as a GM, if you're using like an oracle or those kind of things, there may need to be. I don't know what I'm trying to like. I feel like having some like limits, of like, or like this is the kind of the way that prophecy or oracles or whatever work. Um, and being able to say, well, it doesn't really work that way as this kid, kind of thing. When they come and they're like, well, we want you to tell us this,
right,
this,
to
and this. It's like, well,
stop them from like draining this kid.
yeah, and just like you said, like I think sometimes directional answers, especially if they do give options, and are not just like you need to go to the castle and push the third brick on the left. Like that's not like maybe, but like that's probably not the prophecy that is super interesting,
Right.
kind of thing, or the direction or whatever. But giving vague or ambiguity to that can leave it open for interpretation. Because bringing in a Matthew comment, I know he's talked about with prophecies in his game, like we look back and understand it, but like in the moment, it's not like, oh yeah, this is exactly what that means. It's like, no, something's revealed later, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's what this was talking about.
I started my entire campaign with a riddle / prophecy that was kind of put together.
Yeah.
Ask my players if they even know anything about that thing. To this day, they're like, meh.
Yeah. So I think having that, but then like just kind of the way that like rules is kind of a weird word maybe, but like, okay, this is how I'm going to treat this as a GM when there's an oracle in my game. And that, like, I kind of joked about the father thing, but like even that they have limits on themselves too, where it's like, just because they're an oracle doesn't mean they can see everything and know everything.
When you said a block, I thought you were going to go the route. I thought for sure you were going to say, like, this kid looks at people and it can, like, he can see like the near future for everybody he sees, right? And he's done this since it said 5, right?
Yeah.
And then you're walking by. Maybe you don't approach him, but he approaches you because like he can see everybody's near futures, right? But then he looks at you and sees nothing.
Oh, yeah.
So then he's invested in you, and why the heck he can't see your future?
Yeah, it's interesting. That is cool. Yeah, I like that hook for sure. Definitely there's the hook they give kind of at the end of like, well, he has an untimely demise that he's worried about and not telling anybody. It's like, that's an adventure starter if it somehow gets out. Obviously, like having some oracle of devastation and destruction or threat or something like that come from this kid could start an adventure, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I do think like it could be used really well on that. So I do like him as a GM, but again, as a player, I may be like, eh.
And I don't know, because I haven't done magic users specifically in 5e. Is there like an oracle class? I know there's an oracle class in Pathfinder. Like I know that without a shadow of a doubt. But is there like a subclass in 5e that you're talking like rules and stuff? Maybe you could pull from that too.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's beyond my knowing. I mean, you're gonna get into like divination magic,
right?
But I don't know about. I'd have to look into like the archetypes and stuff like that for
whether it's like yeah.
So yeah, that's a good one. Again, if people out there have interest in that, it's called Masks, and it's out by Gnomes too. We're gonna do one haversack today. Did have some had a haversack email come in from Eric Bright, and it's multiple, but we're only going to do one or two today. We'll see where we get here with this kind of thing. So again, you can always send Haversack emails into riseofthegm@gmail.com. That's where these come from. And the first one here is from Eric Bright. Map making got me thinking about traveling in RPGs. So Josh is already laughing, so that's good. How do you handle travel time? Is the journey important to role play? Are accurate distances and times important? What do you think, Josh?
I have differing answers. I'm going to go with, is the journey important to role play first? As a player, a lot of the time I'm like, I want to like sit down with like the people that you've been like adventuring with, and it shouldn't just be like all blood and guts and battles and moving the story on. Like it should be like that bonding type scenario. But I get role playing isn't, even though this is a tabletop RPG, role playing isn't everybody's cup of tea. But some of my favorite moments in D&D and Pathfinder are just those sessions where you sit and role play. So as a player, I say yes. Role playing the journey is important. As a GM, sometimes facilitating meaningful role playing during that time is difficult.
Yes.
When it comes to traveling or handling travel time, I suck at this. As a teacher, I told Adam before we started, as a teacher, I want to be like, okay, guys, you see the key in the bottom of your map we're going to take, and we're going to go, okay, that's about 100 miles, and you travel this far, this many hours a day, and it's going to take you 10 days to get there. Like, math equation goes off in Josh's head. If you're role playing it, I think obviously you can. I think we've done montages in the past, where it's like, hey, you can check in with your players and kind of get a feel for whether they are wanting to do something during that time meaningful, or if they're like, hey, we just really want to get to Idrisel right now. And so a lot of good can come from travel time. I feel like a lot of times it can kind of be, I don't want to say boring, because it's not always boring, and you should give time for it. But sometimes, if not done properly, it could be boring.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's me.
I'm going to say with that, like paying attention to the table. If people are like, if you're doing something on a travel montage and people are just like, it's like, well, maybe we don't need to do, it's like, you can tell they're not in it, then like move on. But I'm going to go backwards in the questions. I think, are accurate distances and times important? No, to me. And like, I think like, I guess it depends on what you're doing. Like if you're playing a game where maybe
like there's a timeline or a deadline or a
deadline, or even like I can't think, resource management kind of stuff. Like if that matters in your game, then that's gonna matter more. Where it's like doing 100-mile hike is gonna be different than walking across town if you're having to manage like food and water, or kind of things like that. And I think, but I even think about that, like with red markets, ration use is a big part, because there's so much about like scarcity and resource management and stuff like that in that game. But even that can be pretty ambiguous, because you just say, well, this is the leg of the journey takes one ration, kind of thing. And what's a leg of a journey? Well, it's like whatever narratively I need it to be, kind of thing. So I in my style, again, if you have a map, like we just talked about, like you probably should pay somewhat of attention, but I don't know that we have to get the protractor out and like figure out angles and distances and
What's the
um,
hypotenuse,
you know,
Adam?
how far can a horse reasonably go in a day with a cart, with all these kind of things. So but that does matter to some people, and you just need to know who you're playing with, I think. But I typically go with try to be as accurate as possible while only thinking about it for about 10 seconds, kind of thing. I don't want to stall out the game trying to figure out, is this 2 or 3 weeks to this place? I do kind of fall into it's the George Clooney in Oh Brother Where Art Thou, where it's like, this is a geographical oddity, 2 weeks from everywhere. Like that happens to me a lot where I'm like, oh yeah, it's like 2 weeks away on foot. But semi-accurate, but not worrying too deeply about it. Because that's just not how I want to run things.
And to
But
segue off
mhm.
your 2 weeks, I think it's important, and I wrote this down so I didn't forget. Like Matthew's character in Jade Mass, who is an artificer, like someone who tinkers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like a character that's going to use that downtime to do something meaningful, you should give that time for them to do that. Like, because they could do a whole heck of a lot of things in 2 weeks' time of messing with whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a good use. That is a really good use of time, downtime, journey, and having to sit by the campfire for 2 weeks, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is the journey important to role play? I like that. I think it is important to me, and in that both as a player and as a GM. I think part of that is I love journey stories, and like that's a thing where it's like you know the things that happen to Bilbo on the journey to the Lonely Mountain is the story, kind of
Right.
thing. And he becomes a different hobbit by the end because of the things he's experienced. And so I like that, but also it's like, okay, if you're traveling from one town to another to deliver casks of ale for the barkeep guy, like it's like maybe that's not the journey that needs to be played out. So I like to think through certain things when it's like players are traveling, and like one is urgency. It's like, how urgent is this? But the question then becomes, okay, like if it is urgent, maybe it's just like we kind of zoom past. I give a description of what they traveled, and then we're there. That could be one thing because they're trying to get there.
Yeah.
But then there's also the like, okay, things are urgent, so I'm going to throw like 17 problems in front of them on the way because they had 3 days to get there. But once they take care of this and this and that and that, and the wagon's wheel breaks and like all these things, now you have 30 minutes to get there, kind of thing. And so I think that's like, I think about that a little bit of like what needs to be put in front of people to create a little bit of urgency. But then on the other side of things, I do have a love for the like montage. Okay, you're sitting around a campfire, and that's more for like the character building opportunity of like, maybe this didn't get put in a backstory, but as a GM to be like, okay, on the third night of the trip, y'all are sitting around, everybody's kind of staying up a little later, nobody's hit the bedrolls yet, and the conversation turns to, why did you become part of the Thieves Guild? And then the GM gets to sit back and listen to everybody converse, and
I think you've done a really good job of that in the past too, Adam, where you will ask some random question during, and it might not even be travel time, but it's like what it gets the person like me, myself, and I thinking
Mhm.
about how Leonis feels about A, B, or C,
Yeah,
and like then everybody goes around and kind of shares that little bit, and you're like, it's like eye opening to the players
yeah.
and probably you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I like that a lot. It does do that. And I've had a bunch of stuff where like every time I've done that, I'm like, that was awesome. Like, and it's like, it's like, I really, really enjoyed that somebody said that, what they said about this. But then also, our groups, particularly now, back in the day, we had a forum that was like, we would start a forum every time we began a campaign. There'd be character stories. People would write stuff all the time. It's awesome. It's really great. Our group, I built that way. That's why I say it's awesome. But like our group now, it's not always responsive when I'm like, hey, I'd like everybody to send me a paragraph about like what they're doing in their downtime. Like typically I get maybe 2 people respond to that, kind of thing.
Right.
And a beautiful part of that in the moment is you're there and everybody's kind of locked in about like, hey, we're here to game. And I'm kind of thinking about these characters. So that works better. I think that was a hard learned lesson for me of like, okay, I don't need to like force this outside of game time when it can happen here.
I was going to say another idea that we've implemented specifically in Jade Mass, and I've done this in my campaign a few times, is where like we were on our way to Navarre, right? And I wanted to have a conversation with Matthew's character, but for whatever reason, we sped past it. Whether I think we were in person and we were at a hard cutoff time limit, and I had messaged you. I'm like, hey, I want to talk to Eliakim. Can we do that? And we set up a Google document, and like Matthew and I had like this legitimate like conversation on the way down to this dark elf city.
Yeah, right.
So that's another option.
Yeah, for sure. Couple of comments in the chat here. Taylor said, Josh, I really like how you've handled travel before, where you ask us, does anyone want to do anything during this time, or does anyone want to have conversations? We can either choose to fast forward or take some time to RP. And I like that we have that option. I think that's a cool thing, is like to let options be there.
Yeah.
Rob had said it all depends on the type of campaign you're running. Again, like there may not be need for that build into the things. I was thinking about, which again, it kind of depends on what you're trying to do. But if you're like hex crawling, there may be either it's not really time for that, or there's a lot of time for that. Every time you move in, it's kind of, again, what's the campaign you're running? What, if any, story are you telling, kind of thing. And
if you really want to throw your DM for a loop, put a wrench in their plan, you have teleporting daggers. And while everybody else is traveling, you're already back at the city ready to go.
Yep. All right. We're going to play for a full day with. Yeah, that was fun.
That was funny.
Yeah, it's good. So I think we'll cut it there. We'll have more questions in the haversack in future days from Eric, but appreciate that one coming in. And Josh, really thankful you're able to come and hang out today and have this conversation. So for everybody else, we'll be back next week. Matthew will be back on. We're going to be looking a little late, but we're going to be looking at New Year's types things, like celebrations, and like just the idea of a calendar within your game. Like, how does that look? And then we're going to get into a series about place that's going to last for a couple months, and I'm pretty excited.
You say place?
Place. So different types of places in your games. Okay. So you can check on our socials, kind of have a little more info about that there. You can check us out on Instagram and X, as well as, obviously YouTube here. Appreciate you all. Feel free to send in questions to the haversack at riseofthegm@gmail.com. And thanks everybody for being here today. Have a good one.